This is going to be a very sensitive subject dealing with trans issues, so you have been warned. At London Pride, a bunch of lesbian activists marched to the front and said something along the lines of trans activism erases lesbianism or like lesbian identity. What they were saying was that in the trans debate, at least on the internet, I don't know about in the rest of the world, trans people are saying that a woman can have, male parts. And if that's true, then why wouldn't a lesbian sleep with a trans woman because they're both women? If a lesbian prefers women, they should sleep with trans women. And there are a lot of lesbians who disagree, and they get attacked for it. In fact, I think it might have been Sadiq Khan, I'm not sure, but someone put out a statement following their protest saying they were anti-trans activists. And I said, no, they're not anti-trans, they're pro-lesbian activists. There's actually a movement called Get the L Out, or I think that was the protest, I don't know what it is, but it's like remove L from LGBT, because the trans community is at odds with the gay and lesbian communities. This is true. So there's an issue having to do with, they say that, if you're born female, you can still be a man. If you're born male or female, doesn't matter, any gender can be man or woman. That's what or I should say, any sex can be man or woman. That's what they say. But there's a problem then when people have preference. If there is, so using the term like male-bodied people, if there is someone who was born male and they only prefer males, they are gay. That's how we call it. And if they're born female and only prefer females, they're lesbians. However, it's being conflated now in this debate where they're saying it's not about male or female, it's about man or woman. And if men are attracted to men are gay, therefore men should be, with trans men. And that doesn't work because you're talking about a biological female and a biological male. Well, we have this story. It's from The Guardian a couple days ago. Women avoid transgender debate for fear of reaction, says Joe Brand. Writer laments vilification of Germaine Greer and infighting with feminism. Basically, and we'll read through this. One of the arguments is that biological females, feminists, are scared to speak up because they'll be called TERFs, trans exclusionary radical feminists. During Occupy Wall Street, they created a women's caucus. It was supposed to be a space for just women to talk about their issues. However, they had trans women in the group. And a bunch of the women who were trans exclusionary radical feminists or gender critical, whatever you want to call it, were upset because they said, if you are male-bodied, you have male privilege. And the rest of the group said, no, if you're a woman, you don't. And so they created a separate group. There was like the women's caucus and the women's caucus, but, no trans women. It was weird. And then, basically now you have this fighting on the internet between trans inclusive groups and people who don't like, and women who believe that woman means biological female. It's like really, really complicated. Let's read the story. Many women are wary of entering feminist debates over transgender issues because they are frightened of the reaction, the comedian and writer Joe Brand has said. Brand was addressing a debate that has led feminists such as Germaine Greer and Julie Bindel being no-platformed at some universities. She said that reaction was pathetic, and the two sides needed to see there was common ground. The big danger was that women avoided the debate. A lot of people feel wary about talking about the topic, Brand said. A lot of women feel as if they say anything at all, there is a kind of knee-jerk reaction of anger, which has nothing to do with the content of what they said, and because they feel frightened of being threatened. I mean, who wouldn't be? Brand was at the Cheltenham Literature Festival discussing her new book, Born Lippy, which is part of a guide to being female. She said reading The Female Eunuch changed her life, and she lamented the vilification of Greer. I understand the feelings that Germaine Greer is trying to express. I understand the reason why trans activists have responded to it in that way. But I kind of feel if both sides just stopped shouting at each other and talked about it, they would actually find a way of expressing their feelings without all of this kind of hatred for each other. She said people on both sides of the debate were being aggressive, and they should sit down and talk in a more mature way. People are picking up opinions that aren't necessarily being expressed, and the whole thing has blown up into a massive great wall of argument that now can't be torn down. I think there's a lot of infighting with feminism and feminists being quite nasty to each other while depending on which camp they're in. I would rather it was a broad church. We should be able to be adult. But here's the problem. I don't want to get into the debate and my opinions on this. I don't want to violate any rules on YouTube. I don't want to be disrespectful in any way. But there are women, there are feminists who believe woman means biological female. There's two genders. If you're a woman, you don't have male privilege, etc. The trans inclusionary group believes that a trans woman is a woman, period. there's actually been really interesting debates as to who is higher up on the progressive stack. If you're not familiar with progressive stack, it basically means the amount of privilege you have puts you lower and lower and lower, and white male is on top. That's what they think. So the idea is, does a trans man, or one of the questions is, does a trans man have more privilege than a cis woman? Well, the argument is, as a trans person, they're, lower on the pyramid. However, they are a man, so they have male privilege. The argument then is, would a trans man be above a cis woman? Would a trans man be above a trans man will be below a cis man, but above a cis woman? And if you're not familiar, cis means like a person who identifies as the gender, the sex they were born with. It gets complicated. But here's one of the arguments I've heard. Why do we have bathrooms for men and women? A lot of different people will tell you something totally different. I believe that in my experience growing up in the world, there are a lot of females, people born female, who are concerned about safety in private endeavors, such as the washroom. They don't want men in their washrooms. They want a private space away from biological males, I'll say. And there becomes an issue then when trans women who are born biologically male are entering the space. There's arguments that they're not safe, right? I don't know if I agree with that, because obviously trans women have been using women's bathrooms forever without issue. But as we enter the debate now, where everyone's saying like all bathrooms should be open to whoever wants to use them, whatever you want, you end up with communal spaces where women just now feel less safe, right? And it's all about how they feel. One of the arguments I've brought up is not to say one way is right or wrong. The law basically says now that you can use whatever restroom you want. But one of the things I've brought up is that let's say there's a woman who's been a victim of assault at the hands of someone who is biologically male. It doesn't mean that they're transphobic, but it could be that they're going to have anxiety and issues, and they want a space where they know that there won't be people who are biologically male or, etc. If that's taken away from them, we are removing a protection for a special class. And this is where it gets challenging. When I talk about this all the time, but when we try to create more protections, we actually start removing some protections. It can't be perfect. We want to protect the marginalized community of trans women because they're more likely to be victims of violent crime, so they deserve to have a space where they can go and feel safe. At the same time, they are biological females who are now not going to feel safe about it. And this is where everything gets just damn tricky. And I feel like there will never come a time where we have an answer as to how to respectfully treat all marginalized groups. Because you've got people arguing one group is more oppressed than the other, one group isn't oppressed at all, but it is. You've got people who are men's rights activists, right? They claim white males are on top, but you have people literally arguing they're not. Whose word do you take for it? Now we're entering territory where when lesbian activists are upset, they're being told they have to sleep with people who are biologically male, they're being called anti-trans. They get labeled far right. Like, they're called bad people because of this. They have a choice. And this is where it gets interesting. Lesbians, a marginalized group of people, very small minority. They want to have the rights to exist how they see fit, but now they're being called anti-trans. They're being attacked. They're being vilified because we're trying to protect a different community. And this can expand into Abrahamic religion. This can expand into Islam, Christianity, Judaism. You're at odds when you want to protect a religion, but that religion also disagrees with certain practices. You can't have a protection for everybody. There comes a point where we have to say, you know what? Maybe the individual will have to figure it out and deal with the problems they experience on an individual level. Should someone be free from violence? Absolutely. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what you look like. You have a right to be safe from harm. You do, right? We as a society will try to protect you. Someone who violates your autonomy, your agency, is committing a crime, and we put those people away. We punish them for doing so. You have a right to freely exist, to pursue happiness, liberty, etc. But right now it seems like whether or not someone's allowed to use a certain bathroom or talk about certain issues doesn't put them in jeopardy. You could argue the bathroom thing, keeps them safe, but if we're talking about someone being in a space where they feel safe, that's different from if we're putting them somewhere dangerous, right? So this story is a bit esoteric, and I don't know the exact issues that they're talking about in terms of this. I don't know who these comedians are, but I wanted to bring it up specifically because I felt like this issue of feminists versus TERFs is pretty prominent. And it's probably the most prominent example of the fact that we cannot protect everyone in the same way at the same time. We can't. Because you've got people, biologically female, who say that they are weaker and smaller than biological males. And just because someone is a trans woman doesn't mean that's going to change, and they don't like it. So to the person who says they want a safe space, do we tell them you are not allowed to have it? Do we tell them no? Someone else is more deserving of a safe space. How do we quantify whether or not a trans woman is more deserving of a safe space than a biological female? I don't know how to do it. I don't. And I want to make sure that we can give everybody respect. I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to live peacefully and pursue happiness. But I think that we're reaching a point where things are going to destabilize, and it's not possible. This is just another example of someone getting in trouble for feminism not always being trans inclusive. Anyway, stick around. I'll have another video up tomorrow on my main channel at 4 p.m. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you then.